And as the former PFLAG president of Temecula, it is my sincere honor to introduce the Executive Director of PFLAG National, Jody Huckaby.
Okay. So let me first do a shout out to all of the communication directors in the world. That picture up there, that's what I looked like before I took the job 7 years ago. So I'm just saying, and that's with Photoshop. But you know, those communications people, they won't let you do what you really want to do, so I just do what they tell me to do. All right, so I didn't want to kill any trees or any leaves on trees today. So, and we had a little snafu. Who else was in the business center with me this morning trying to print? Okay, no, you weren't the angry one. There was somebody else. So anyway, so I have my laptop, and I have enough juice. So first of all, Vinny, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And I have to say, I think it was Don Lemon on Friday night who, when he was doing his acceptance speech, referred to you as, maybe he described you as tenacious, in terms of you trying to get him to be here, and he was just not able to do it. But you were, I think he described it as tenacious, or if he didn't, that's certainly what he was intending. And for those of you who have ever been asked by Vinny to do something over the last 3 years for CESCaL, I mean, you could read between the lines. I mean, the guy is, I think, a lot more than tenacious. In fact, my assistant, Veronica, Vinny described you as the nicest stalker she's ever met. He had me booked for this conference, it must have been 11 months ago. And it's interesting, you were right, PFLAG needed to be here. What I didn't realize is that I needed to be here too. It wasn't just the organization, but that I needed to be here. And that's part of what I wanted to talk to you about today. The other thing that my assistant told me once we got booked and we were trying to figure out, you know, what days I needed to be here, and so I just booked I'd be here for the whole conference, what I'd be doing in terms of my speaking at the conference. And my assistant came to my office, and she said, well, she said, actually, you're going to be the opening act for Daniel Joseph Baker. And I thought, well, how cool is that? I don't know who Daniel Joseph Baker is, but I'm going to find out who Daniel Joseph Baker is. And I got to say, as I was looking for, oh, well, the other thing is, in the program, Kate and I thought we were going to be both the opening act for Daniel, but it turns out we're doing things a bit differently, which is good. So I guess one of the things I was looking for in terms of a theme for my remarks today about PFLAG and about this incredible conference and all of you, I started doing some research on Daniel. And where's Daniel? There he is. Oh, you're way over there. All right. Yeah. So Daniel, one of the themes I decided on for my remarks this morning is a thing I believe you call fierceness, right? Okay, fierceness. So we're talking about fierceness today. But there's something that I didn't hear. Maybe I missed it in the remarks from the stage yesterday, but I don't think so. You're a very talented guy. America's Got Talent was right, that you certainly have talent, but what's even more important, I think, is that young people today have another role model to look up to be all that they are, and to dare to dream. And so that's very exciting to be sharing the stage with you this morning. But you had a special gig yesterday that I read about, and I just wanted to say, wow. How many of you are sports fans? Were all the coaches in the room? And Kate? All right, yes. All right, so you sang the national anthem yesterday at the Clippers game, didn't you? And yeah, look at that. And who did the Clippers play? Kate? I got to say, oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, coaches, I'm sorry. I didn't want to put Kate on the spot. Who did the Clippers play yesterday? The Spurs. And where are they from? San Antonio. Okay, very good. All right, there we go. Yeah. And Daniel, you're from the state of Texas, aren't you? Okay. And does anybody know what the score was? I am so not a sports fan. I did my research. Seriously. Does anybody know what the score was yesterday? Everybody's Googling it? Besides you? Yes. They went into overtime, right? But LA lost. Yes. To a Texas team where Daniel, lives? Okay, all right, I'm just saying. All right, so, all right, that's not, no, the theme is fierceness. So you're going to hear all about fierceness later. And gosh, yeah, Kate is, I told her this early on in my, my work with PFLAG. She's been at NCLR forever, or just a long time, but she's truly one of my sheroes, so it is a tremendous honor to share this morning with you. All right, so fierceness. I'm taking the word from Daniel. Oh, and you're performing Tuesday, Mardi Gras for Miss Dupree's? Right? Okay, so I'm from Louisiana, and Mardi Gras is this coming Tuesday, right? And he's got a gig performing in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, so wow, I'm really impressed. I'll be celebrating Mardi Gras as well, making my gumbo on Tuesday. All right, so fierceness. I thought what a great topic to talk about our founder, Gene Manford. And so I'm going to tell you a story. And my goal coming out here was to tell one story. So let me tell that story first. So Gene Manford is the founder of PFLAG, and this year marks the 40th anniversary of Gene Manford doing something rather historic. So let me set the stage back in the late 1960s. Now, Gene Manford is still with us. She is 92 years old. She lives in Daly City, south of San Francisco. And I get to visit Gene a couple times a year, and Gene was telling me recently, she was retelling her story. Her memory is fading, but she loves it when I visit because she gets to retell the PFLAG story, and I love to hear it. So she was telling me that she and her husband, Morty, she and her husband, Jules, described their lives as the perfect all-American middle-class Jewish existence, living in Queens, New York. Now, Gene Manford has something in common with a lot of you. She was an educator. She was a middle school teacher, and her husband, Jules, was a dentist. And they had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. So again, the perfect all-American family. Life was great, she says, until the late 1960s when Morty came out to them as gay, Morty, their son. And Gene said, you know, Jody, we have, and we've always had, family values as central to who they are and their existence. She said, so it wasn't that we had a problem in the late 60s. She said, we knew somehow we were going to love him. She says we were going to love him through it. I love that expression. We were going to love him through the fact that he was coming out to them as gay. But, she said, they asked him to do one thing. Don't tell anybody else, and let's not talk about it outside the house. So that was the framework for Morty moving out into the world. Now, Morty was not the kind of guy who was going to take orders from his mother. He went on to law school, and he became an activist pretty early on. So one of the things that the police department in New York City had a terrible habit of doing was rounding up all the gays and all the bars and throwing them in a paddy wagon and bringing them downtown and processing them and publishing their names in the paper. It's all about shaming gay people for gathering in public spaces. And Morty was determined to do something about it. So he decided he was going to take on NYPD. Pretty bold for a newly out guy. And so he attended a rally. It was at a Hilton Hotel in Manhattan, where the chief of police was doing a presentation, a major speech to his officers, rallying the troops about why he was one of the greatest police chiefs in New York City. And Morty was determined, he was absolutely determined to get his voice heard. He thought it was a great opportunity, all the press were there. And he gathered some of his cronies together to create a scene at the speech. Now, there were several anti-gay protesters who had heard that Morty and his group were going to be there, and so they all gathered to create a line and a wall to separate Morty and his people from the police chief and his people. And melee ensued, as they say, and there were 2 of the anti-gay protesters who grabbed Morty after calling him all kinds of ugly names, and they threw him down the escalator of the hotel. Threw him down the escalator of the hotel. Now, the interesting thing, as Gene tells the story, is Gene and her husband, Jules, knew that he was going to this rally, and that's all they knew. They didn't know much about it, but they knew it was going to be contentious, and they were watching the evening news, and they found out about the fact that there had been an attack while they were watching the evening news. And it was at that moment that Gene and her husband, Jules, decided it was no longer okay to be silent. It was no longer okay to not talk about this thing gay outside the house. At first, obviously, she was concerned about his physical well-being. Well, it turns out he had lots of scrapes and bruises, but he was all right. Mentally and emotionally, he was more charged than ever to get out there and to work. And Jean decided she needed to figure out what her way was going to be. And so she attempted to contact the press. Nobody at the New York Times would take her call because nobody wanted to take on the New York Police Department. And so she called several people that she knew and people that Morty knew, and Morty said, Mom, nothing's going to happen. Nobody wants to take on this issue. And so she finally got, she reached a reporter, a gay reporter, lesbian reporter at the New York Post, who said, look, no one's going to write the story, but if you write a letter to the editor, I'll do everything I can do to get the letter published. And she wrote a letter, and the New York Post published it. And in the letter, she was rather, she says, simple but emphatic. She said, I have 2 gay kids, we have 2 gay kids. We have 2 kids, and one of them happens to be gay. She said, it's time we start talking about this and doing something about the harassment that's going on with our gay children. Well, Morty was awfully proud of her in that letter. It was the first time that a straight person, let alone a mother, had been so publicly supportive, at least to Morty's knowledge. And so he said, Mom, we've got this thing in the village called the Christopher Street Liberation Day Parade. It's in its 2nd or 3rd year, and we're going to walk around the village for a couple of blocks and chant all these great chants that we like to chant as gay people. And why don't you join us? And she said, well, I'll do that, but I'm a school teacher, so you got to let me create my own sign. And he said, all right, Mom, whatever, just meet me at the parade route, at the front of the parade route. And so she did, and she carried the sign. She walked over to the parade route with him, and the sign said, parents of gays, unite in support for our children. Rather simple. So, the way she describes it, Morty was moved to tears. He was pretty impressed with his mom, the activist, the newly found activist, and they walked arm in arm through this little parade that ultimately was the precursor to pride parades in New York City today. Well, there were so many people along the parade route, so many gay, lesbian, bi, and trans people along the parade route that were so emotional. They were shocked that here it was, that this woman, this mother, proudly proclaiming that you should be supportive of your gay kid. They were shocked, they were crying, and they said, would you talk to my mother? Would you talk to my father? Would you let them know I'm gay? Because I don't have any idea how I could do that myself. So she and Jules, her husband, and Morty, and their daughter Suzanne talked about it, and they decided to start a support group a year later in a church basement in Manhattan. And that was 1973. Fast forward to today, and PFLAG has over 350 chapters across the country. We focus on 3 things. We support families, and through the coming out process, we support a lot of LGBT people in their own coming out processes. I think that Vinny is a really great example of the evolving and new generation of leadership in PFLAG chapters across the country. Temecula is one of those rural communities, Vinny, right, that certainly there's not a whole lot of gay happening, if you will. And I think that the fact that so many of our rural chapters, where we have chapters, they're the only thing in town. For many of those communities, there are no gay bars. There's no gathering places. So it's not a surprise that more and more younger LGBT people are rising in leadership among our PFLAG chapters. So that's who we are. And then in terms of our evolution, moving forward over the last 7 years, we've launched a new project called Straight for Equality, recognizing that with our, at that time, over 30 years of experience working with parents and family members, mostly straight people, we had to do something different to engage more straight people to understand these issues. Those straight people that don't have gay kids, don't have gay family members that they know of, don't have any close LGBT friends, but perhaps with the right education, the right invitation, and a different approach, we could bring people in to become a straight ally. And so we've been doing that work over the last several years, and we've taken that, that program to workplaces, to faith communities. We're beginning to test some programs in schools. We did a major launch in some healthcare organizations, recognizing that there is potential for straight people to become allies everywhere that we live, play, eat, worship, work. And that's one of the things that I was really, really thrilled about. In the reading of 8 from the stage on Friday night, so many of the young people identifying as allies, so wow. And that's where my talk was going to end, and I was going to be done, and then we would get to hear a lot of music, and Kate would go give us all of her legal expertise for the rest of the time. But that's not where it's going to stop. And the reason that's not where it's going to stop is because of several of the people that took the stage over the last 3 days. I have to say that I tell the Gene Manford story, or some version of it, right, in my job as PFLAG's National Executive Director, at least once a week. All right, so do the math. Once a week, 7 years, 52 weeks a year, and we don't get much time off, right, Kate? No. It's over 300 times. I probably told the Gene Manford story in some iteration over 300 times. And what I realized on Friday and what I realized yesterday is how easy it is to tell the stories of other people. It is amazingly easy to tell the stories of other people. It is not easy to tell our own stories. And when Gautam from the White House stood up and talked about being the geeky nerd in his school, and somehow everybody else seemed to know that he was gay, and he was kind of one of the last ones to know. What struck me is he said, you know, I heard it so often, the bullying, the slurs. I thought it was normal. That was his normal. Wow. Wow. This guy works for the White House. That's courage. That is courage. Chris Lim with MTV talked about how, yep, as a gay guy, life was not easy, and here he is, the head of programming for MTV, having a radical opportunity to influence programming across the globe around so many wonderful shows, including LGBT-specific shows. Trish, wow. I was blown away by your story and your courage to share it on Friday night. Yeah. Yesterday, the luncheon speakers, so many of the education leaders that were telling their own story. I love the story about, I want to make certain I got it right, that's why I've got my little notes here. Yes, it was, well, Steve Salva, my gosh. I know, Steve, you're here, in the California School Counselors Association, and his 70-year-old father. That resonated with me on so many levels. Thank you for the courage for sharing that. Dean Vogel, wow, the president of the California Teachers Association, being willing to say that he has fear when he gets out of the 3 major urban markets, when he goes into the Temecula's and all of the other places across the state. Sometimes he has fear of telling the truth about the power of loving everyone equally. Wow, that's powerful. That is powerful and that is courageous. So, I gotta say, that has been the theme that I've heard. So I threw out all the remarks I had written over the last week and said, we're not doing that. I guess I have to tell my story, my own personal story. And I don't like telling my own personal story, and I have, like the Gene Manford story, various iterations of the story based on who the audience is. I was so excited when you all, when Vinny, I guess, had let me know that there were parents and students that were invited specifically for today, that I knew this was a great opportunity. The power of family and the power of story. So, my own story, and Vinny shared a bit of it. I grew up in the Deep South. We were comparing notes, Daniel, earlier, in a small town, Eunice, Louisiana, outside of Lafayette. Nobody knows where that is either, but it's down there in the bayou. And we celebrate Mardi Gras. We eat a lot, and we drink a lot, and we have a good time. Very Catholic, a large family. I'm the 7th of 8 kids. My mother was the 11th of 11 kids. So I have a gaggle of relatives all over the Gulf Coast still. And family was very important to us. It was a very small town, about 8,000 people, very Catholic, very Republican, very conservative. And I knew early on that I was different, but didn't have a name for it. As I got a little older, I remember the first attraction, physical and emotional attraction I had to a guy. Scared to death, didn't talk about it, of course. And I remember in elementary school, and some of the stories that were shared, Vinny, certainly the story that you shared also, brought me back to the first time that I heard someone call me a sissy. I was at a Catholic school. I was in the 3rd grade. And I didn't know what sissy was. I mean, I lived a sheltered life. I didn't know what CESCaL was. I had no idea. You know, we didn't have the internet, so I couldn't go log on and onto my iPad and look it up. I didn't know what CESCaL was, but I knew the tone at which it was thrown at me, that it wasn't intended to be a compliment. So I went home to Mom. I love my mother, good Catholic woman. We prayed the rosary every night. And I said, Mom, 2 guys in my class called me a sissy. And she looked, I remember the look on her face, she looked surprised. And I said, Mom, what's a sissy? What's a sissy? I've never heard that before. And they laughed when they said it. And she just threw out, she said, a sissy is someone who loves the Virgin Mary. I thought, how cool is that? Being Catholic, that was a major compliment, right? I mean, still to this day, my mother has statues of all the saints and Mary and all the iterations of Mary. So I thought, well, this is a good thing. But it's funny, the term stuck. And others of my classmates and other kids in other classes would call me a sissy. And I just knew something wasn't right. I knew. And then I remember the first time I heard the word faggot. I was in 7th grade. Wow. By then I knew what sissy was, and it wasn't what Mom said. And I realized in those formative years that my mother had to lie to me to protect me. It told me, obviously, that she loved me, but she had to lie about her Catholic faith to make her kid feel better. Yeah. Yeah, those were some challenging years growing up, going to that good Catholic school. And so I somehow, without the help of an It Gets Better video, somehow I made it through. I really don't know. Some good people in my life somehow managed to get me through. I was convinced, though, by 7th grade when I heard the word faggot that I was not gay. That was not going to be me. There was one person who was rumored to be gay in town, and nobody liked him, so I knew that wasn't me. So I didn't have a name for it, and I just sort of buried it and pushed it out deep until college. When I was a sophomore in college, one of my brothers wrote a letter to my family announcing that he was gay, and that he had been living with his partner for 2 years, and he wanted everybody to know. And my brother, being the intellectual, wrote a 25-page letter. We have a way of trying to outdo each other in the Huckaby clan. So I remember because I had come home for Christmas, and my dad called the family meeting, which meant all the kids and them had to sit at our big dining room table. And he started to read the letter. And he got through the first paragraph, and he threw it down on the table, and he said, "No son of mine is going to be like that. He will never be allowed in the house." End of the discussion. It was a rough couple of years for the Huckaby family. 2 years later, another one of my brothers, who was engaged to the Miss Eunice. Yes, there actually is a beauty contest in the beauty pageant Eunice. He was engaged to one of my classmates who happened to be Miss Eunice. Beautiful, beautiful girl. My dad just loved her. So my brother announced to my parents that he was gay. Obviously, they were not going to get married. Not a good scene in the Huckaby household. I was away at college, so I would just buzz in for Christmas to see who was coming out, and then I would go back to school. But by the time I finished with my undergraduate work, I realized that I needed to come clean. I had been seeing a therapist for all of my college years, a wonderful Jesuit psychotherapist. He's a Catholic Redemption. He was amazing. He was absolutely amazing and really helped me to focus. And so I knew it was time. I had to come out. I could no longer live an inauthentic life with my family. So I thought I would do the, I didn't know which was worse, the letter or telling them in person, which was what brother number 2 did. So I opted for the letter. It was a safer way, and I thought, you know, look, I've got a degree in psychology. It's going to be a 35-page letter, and it's going to be packed with resources and information, and because, you know, I studied psychology to save the world, to save myself. So I wrote the letter, and didn't go over so well. I remember that my mother called me. I didn't have the courage to actually read the letter to her. I dropped off the letter as I was leaving from Christmas vacation. Now, this was over the course of 4 years, 3 Christmases, and third child came out. My mother called me when I got back to Dallas at college, and she said, you know, you're going to go to hell. You and your two brothers. She said, you know, I love you, but there's no room for you in heaven. And it pains me, and you've got to figure out a way to go straight. I didn't talk to my mother for another 6 months. And what I did is I started mailing all kinds of literature, again, pre-internet, all kinds of literature to her. I found a PFLAG brochure in Dallas, and I mailed it to her. I found books. I mailed them to my dad. My dad would not talk to us, the three of us. I was determined to fix the family. Well, I have to say that things began to shift, and it was only because my mother, as my mother tells it, a letter that was written in the Dear Abby column. So Dear Abby, the great columnist, that column still runs in the Eunice News. It's published twice a week. And it was the first column letter that she'd ever published from a mother, writing to Dear Abby saying, look, I've just found out that my daughter is a lesbian. What am I supposed to do? And she said two things. You love your daughter just as you did before you found out that she's gay, and you go to PFLAG and get some information. Now, my mother was not about to go to a meeting. There was no PFLAG meeting for 200 or 300 miles around. But it stuck with her because she just believed in Dear Abby. And pretty amazing, pretty amazing. The power of the written word in Eunice, Louisiana. Things began to shift, and 2 years later, one of my other siblings, now by this time, really things were beginning to change. So one of my other siblings decided, let's just ruin another holiday. And so he calls me, and he calls my other two brothers, and he says, and I knew he was gay. And he said, this is the day I'm going to do it, and I'd like you all to be there. So we were all there, and all of the other 7 kids were there. No, one sister, she wasn't there yet. She couldn't accept us. So 6 of us were there, and we were all in the kitchen, and they were in the living room with the doors closed. And they talked for, my God, at least an hour, I guess. And then my brother came out. He had some tears in his eyes, and my mother just all red-faced and crying, but she had a smile on her face. And I thought, well, okay. I said, Mom, what's the word? She said, oh my God, Jody, I'm so relieved that he's gay. I said, what? She said, I'm relieved that he's gay. She said, I thought he was going to tell us he was joining the military. That we'd have a problem with. So, yeah, progress for sure. And over the course of years, there was great movement from rejection to tolerance, to acceptance, to affirmation, and then to celebration. And that is truly the journey that so many PFLAG people, family members, go through. Some never make it to that full acceptance. I am so thrilled to say that my family did. And for some of my siblings, it was much later, over the course of the last 25 years, but they all got there, and they're all at the point of true celebration. It is pretty remarkable. What I know about the power of family, what I know about the power of community, and what I know about the power of schools, so much of it I've learned from my own experiences. And I thank all of you who are educators, who are social workers, who are counselors, who are coaches, who are administrators and secretaries and staff, all of you, the students, the parents who are here today. You are doing, in my mother's language, you're doing God's work. You're absolutely doing God's work, creating a much better environment. PFLAG is here to be in partnership with you. I cannot imagine a more important job to have. As challenging as the work is, it is amazing when we have successes. When we have successes in the courts, when we have successes in legislatures, when we have successes in ballot boxes, when we have successes in families. When you see a family, last month in LA at the PFLAG meeting, 2 new couples coming in, their 13-year-old and one's 17-year-old just came out as gay, really struggling with the faith element. How do you reconcile? How do they reconcile this with their Jewish or Catholic or Presbyterian upbringing? And to see movement by other people sharing their stories. So I would encourage all of you. I hope that, I know I have found a stronger voice because of CESCaL. You were both, Trish and Vinny, absolutely right. PFLAG needed to be here. I needed to be here. Thank you for helping me strengthen my voice and deepen my commitment and my organization's commitment. To all of you and the work that you're doing, I know that together we will continue to change lives. Thank you.